नहमदुहु व नसल्ली अला रसूलिल करीम व नशहदु अन ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह वहदहु ला शरीका लह व नशहदु अन्ना मुहम्मदन अब्दुहु व रसूलुहु रब्बि इश्रह ली सदरी व यस्सिर ली अमरी वहलुल उक़दतम मिन लिसानी यफ़क़हू क़ौली. Respected viewers and listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This Quranic understanding program is presented by Adult Quranic Education Program. Today we shall try to read and then learn a few more verses from Surah Al-Baqarah, second chapter of Quran, starting from verse number 243. 243 of chapter Al-Baqarah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Alam tara ila alladhina, have you not considered those people kharaju min diyarihim, who left their homes, bahum ulufun, while they were in thousands in numbers, hadar al-maut, fearing death. Faqala lahum Allah, then Allah said to them, mutu, let you all die. Summa ahyahum, then He brought them back to life. Inna Allah, verily Allah is ladhu fazlun ala nas, full of bounties for people. Walakin aksar nasi la yashkurun, but most of the people are ungrateful. Waqatilu fi sabilillah, O believers, you fight in the way of Allah. Wa'lamu, and know it, anna Allah sami'un alim. Surely Allah is all hearing, all knowing. Man dhal ladhi yukridu Allahu qardan hasana. Who is there who can loan to Allah a goodly loan for yudaifu lahu adafan kathir, so that He returns it with manifold increase. Wallahu yakbitu wa yabsutu, and it is Allah who withholds and grants abundance. Wa ilayhi turja'un, and unto Him is your final return. Alam tara ila al-mala'i min bani Israel, have you not considered the assembly of chiefs from amongst the children of Israel, min ba'di Musa, after the time of Moses? Is qalu, when they said, linnabiyillahum, to their prophet, uslana malika, you appoint a commander or a king over us, nukatil fi sabilillah, so that we fight in the way of Allah. Qala, the prophet of the time said, hal asaytum in kutiba alaykum al-kitab, isn't like that, then when fighting will be enjoined upon you, Allah tuqatilu, that you shall not fight? Qalu, they said, wama lana alla nuqatila fi sabilillah, how is it that we will not fight in the way of Allah? Waqad ukhrijna min diyarina, whereas we have been thrown out, driven out of our own homes, wa abnaina, and we have been separated from our families. Falamma kutiba alayhim al-qital, but that happened, that when fighting was enjoined upon them, tawallaw illa qalilan minhum, they turned back from the battlefields, illa qalilan minhum, except few amongst them. Wallahu alimun bizalimin, and Allah has full knowledge of wrongdoers. Sadaqallahu al-azim. Okay, about these verses, we have to remember, as I've been telling you time and again, that this chapter Al-Baqarah was revealed to beloved Prophet, peace be upon him, in Madinah. The revelation of this chapter Al-Baqarah is spread over many, many years, because this is the longest chapter of Quran. Its revelation spread over many years, some say 5, 7, or even maybe 6, 7, 8 years over that period of time. This chapter was revealed in piecemeals. 5 verses sometimes, and after sometimes 3, 10, 5, like that. So regarding these verses, we know that too, then when Muslims, under the leadership of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, after spending 13 years in Makkah, hard years in Makkah, against all the odds, facing all kinds of persecution, atrocities, torture, they finally left Makkah under divine command and reached Madinah. They started settling there, and situation was very much better in Madinah to settle down for Muslims, and they started settling down. But the enemies of Islam that from Meccans, they would not allow Muslims to live in peace. They wanted that Muslims should get no time to settle down. And it was better to finish them off in the early stage before they get settled in Medina. That's why they started inciting Muslims, so that they react, and these enemies of faith from Mecca would get a chance and opportunity to invade Medina and finish Islam once for all. This was their evil planning, evil ideas, evil thoughts. And when they, in fact, started acting on this unholy agenda, at that time, Muslims were allowed to fight against their opponents. Otherwise, 13 years in Mecca and more than 1 year in Medina, Muslims were not allowed. They were asked only to show patience, total patience against all the atrocities or provocations, not to react. Be patient. But when things started becoming out of hand, Allah's command came. We read in this chapter itself, verse number 190. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Now you fight against your enemies. But in the pathway of Allah, you fight against them, against those who have come to fight against you. But don't cross limits. Be disciplined even during war, and follow the do's and don'ts. But it was very hard for Muslims at the time, because they had just hardly 1 year had passed that they had left their homes from Mecca. They didn't have any place for settlement for them. They had no business. They had no, in fact, regular means of earnings. They had nothing. And they were physically also weak. Financially, they were crippled. And not forget about armaments, arms and ammunition. It was almost nothing, none. In such situations, Muslims were asked, now you are allowed. You have to fight against those your enemies who have been fighting against you. At this stage, it was natural. Some of the Muslims started thinking, was it the right time to fight when we have nothing with us, no armaments? How can we fight against an organized army if we are attacked? And they were attacked. Army of pagans of Mecca, under the leadership of great Abu Jahl, father of arrogance, marched towards Medina. And when this information reached Prophet, peace be upon him, he advises followers a meeting with due consultations. They decided that we shall not allow Meccans to enter Medina. We shall take them en route. And it was finally decided. It is in such circumstances, there was some hesitancy on behalf, in the minds of certain Muslims. And that's not something that it's not ill of them. It doesn't lower their status. It's a natural process, because they were, no doubt they were great, but they were after all humans. There was some kind of hesitancy. How can they fight when they have nothing? They don't have enough to eat. They cannot feed their families. They are physically weak and morally not too sound as they are to defend and be tough. And in such situations, that's why time and again they were asked, don't worry. Once Allah's command, Muslims don't fight on the basis of their numbers or the armaments. Muslims fight only on the basis of their faith in God. Once they follow the command of Allah, Allah is with them. He goes to take care. And that it really happened. When at the end of the day, confrontation started in the fields of Badr between mighty Meccan army and feeble, weak, and almost unarmed Medinites. They had only few horses, few swords, and they fought. And ultimately, it was unbelievable. At the end of the day, Muslims were victorious against a strong army. That was the first victory of Muslims. And the war of Badr proved to be the beginning of the end for Kufr and Shirk, whereas it opened the doors of further victories of Muslims. It is inside circumstances, some historical events are related and explained to Muslims. That don't worry, don't be like those people who were in the past. There's no mention when this, what we're studying today, was verse number 43. When did this happen? Why did it happen? Quran is not concerned about that. Quran only wants to take readers to a conclusion, to take a lesson from old historical events, rather than putting them in unnecessary details. That's what Quran said. Oh believers, now you have been ordered to fight. Be ready. Don't be like those people. Maybe 1,000 years back, 2,000 years back, at any stage of history, they too were almost in the same situation as you are now, O Muslims. Their opponents were strong and mighty. And even at the time, the Muslims of the time were asked by their prophets that you fight, but do to fight against those enemies. But there was hesitancy. They didn't come out. They didn't follow the command. In fact, they left their homes just to avoid war. They didn't want to get killed by the swords of their enemies. Then Quran says, see what happened to them. Quran says it doesn't mean that that a person can die only in a war. If he doesn't go for a war, he'll not die. Death is destined. It's regarding, in this context, we have to read this first verse, that's verse number 243. Alam tara ila alladhina, have you not considered those people, kharaju min diyarihim, who left their homes, wahum ulufun, whereas they were in thousands. They were thousands in numbers, hadar al-maut, fearing death. Fearing death because they were ordered to fight. They wanted to avoid fight, so left their homes. But that didn't stop them from dying, because they were not fighting in an army. فَقَالَ اللَّهُمُ اللَّهُ مُوتُ, Allah said to them, you let to die. And it just happened that they died. There are different versions of how they died. Some say an epidemic fell upon them. Epidemic, some plague or some, and so they died. Just to show them that it is not only war which killed a person. It's a time and Allah's will. فَقَالَ اللَّهُمُ اللَّهُ مُوتُ. Allah asked them, do let you die. And they died. But God is so merciful, gracious. He wanted only to make them understand the importance of war, sometimes which becomes inevitable. The Quran says, Summa ahyahum. Then He brought them back to life. Inna Allah la zu fazl ala nas. Surely Allah is full of bounties for His people. Walakinna aksar nasi la yashkurun. But despite that, most of the people are ungrateful. They are not grateful. They don't express their gratitude to God for all the favors which He bestowed upon them. So this, I told you, it's nowhere in Quran which may explain the details of it. Why did it happen? Who was the prophet? What was the country? And who were their opponents? No. And in the light of this, now comes a command to Muslims of Madinah. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Be not like those people who left their homes, hearths, fearing death, though they were in thousands, but you should not behave like that. You should take a lesson from them. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. So, all believers of today, you fight in the way of Allah. Because وَعْلَمُوا, and know it, Inna Allah Sami. Surely Allah is all hearing. Aleem, He is all knowing. So He knows. If you try to make excuses that we are physically weak, Allah knows it better than you. If you feel that you are financially so weak, does Allah know that? If you start discussing between us that why fighting has been ordained upon us in such circumstances, when we don't have armaments, we don't have swords, we don't have throws and arrows, and we don't have other protective gears, doesn't Allah know that? Forget about that. In so it's God who knows what command to send, what time. This better known to Him. That's why the Muslims are asked, وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And you fight in the way of Allah. وَعْلَمُوا, and know it, أَنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Surely Allah is all hearing and all knowing. Then it is a manzal lady. The war fighting means laying down, to be prepared or ready to lay down your life for just to seek pleasure of God, just to protect the geographical and ideological boundaries of a Muslim state or Islamic state. But war that time didn't mean only come to fight. There, as I told you earlier, that time army was not yet established as an institution. So everybody had to go for war, and adult males, they had to. Number two, there was no Ministry of Army. There were no separate funds in the budget as we have now, railway budget and defense budgets and all that budget. There was nothing. At the time of war, all participants and whole community, whole ummah had to donate their money for that, whether in cash or kind, whatever was in their possession. So this verse is regarding that. Inside Surah, who is there who can loan Allah a goodly loan? That means not only you have to be ready to lay down your lives for a cause, but you have to also, you should spend your wealth, donate open-heartedly, so that arms can be bought. There's special arrangements of ration for eating and drinking and others what is needed, and to buy protective gears, to buy arms and ammunition and like that. So it is said that if you spend your wealth, it is as if you are giving a goodly loan to God. Imagine, this is, I'd say, mercy of Allah's mercy at its climax. We know from Quranic point of view, and that's fact also, that whatever we possess, whether our health, our physical strength, our mental capabilities, or our wealth, or our earnings, whatever it is, nothing belongs to us. It's only Allah who has provided us, whether health, wealth, earnings, and everything. Imagine, out of that wealth, Quran asks us, Allah asks us to spend a portion in the way of Allah for defending Islamic territories. Or it also means to help the poor, needy, orphans, destitutes. Imagine if Allah would have asked us to spend everything of our earnings, that was not anything wrong. It was not anything anybody would put an objection to that, because when everything belongs to God, He can ask us to spend everything in the cause. But see, He said, no, you spend a portion of it for your own protection, because war is for your protection, for geographical and ideological boundaries of your faith you have to defend. Or you spend something on poor, needy, and destitutes and widows. They are part and parcel of your community and your families, and yes, that's a portion of your wealth. The rest is yours. How merciful is Allah? There's a specific, minor amount on all these good purposes, the rest is yours. That is mercy. But imagine, Quran goes a step ahead. Quran says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if you spend for a good cause, for defense purposes, on armaments, or on some welfare purposes, or for poor and needy people, it is a portion of your wealth, a small portion, from which wealth, which all belongs to God. It said that it is as if you are loaning God a goodly loan. Imagine, it is mercy, I say, at its climax. Who is there who can loan a goodly loan to Allah? Who can give goodly loan to Allah? So that He returns it with manifold increase in this world and actually in the life hereafter. So imagine how merciful Allah is. Wallahu yakbitu wa yabsut. Maybe when a person starts spending for some good cause, sometimes he feels in the heart of hearts that my money will be spent, I'll be left with nothing. I may have to say, face hardships or poverty due to my spendings. But Quran gives a solution to it. Quran says, Wallahu yakbidu wa yabsut. It is Allah who withholds and also who grants abundance. That it is in His powers. You spend this time, He may grant you abundance. You spend a penny, He will give you $1. You spend $1, He will pay you in hundreds and thousands in return. But provide you spend with your full belief, with your full faith. That's Allah. But just one certain example. It is when this verse was revealed, since it was revealed in Madinah. In addition to polytheists, pagans, there were some Jewish tribes also around. They too were invited to faith, but they didn't. Few of them accepted faith, Islam. Others rejected due to arrogance and hatred and jealousy. They rejected. When this verse was revealed, some of those Jews started making jokes of it. They started ridiculing Prophet, peace be upon him, and his followers, telling him, see, there's, on one hand, the Muslims say that God is the master of this whole universe. Lahu khazainu samawati wal ard, to Him belong all the treasures of heavens and earth. And He gives to anyone whatever anybody possesses. Now, God of Muslims is facing, God forbid, bankruptcy. There's nothing left in his coffers. And he has started asking loans from some humans. They started making a joke out of it. Unfortunately, such arrogant people cannot understand it. It needs wisdom to understand the significance of such commands. And they started ridiculing, laughing, mocking. We know there was a divine response to that jokes and ridicule. We see in Quran itself. لَقَدْ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ قَوْلَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ فَقِيرٌ وَنَحْنُ أَغْنِيَاءُ. Allah has certainly heard what these people say. What they say, that who say that Allah has turned poor and needy, and we, on the other hand, humans are wealthy, and now Allah is seeking loan from people. So they were given a warning that they will have to face the consequences of such ridiculous, such false allegations they are leveling against Prophet, peace be upon him, and his followers. Certainly, Allah has heard the words of those people who say that Allah has turned poor, and now we are richer than God, God forbid. The Quran says, the answer is, Yutil hikmata man yasha. These are words of wisdom. But these wisdom words are only understood by wise people, wise men. That's why Allah grants wisdom to whom He wills. وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. And whom He grants wisdom, to him has granted great khairan kathira, a great gift and great reward for such. وَمَا يَذَكُرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Only men of understanding can understand such things. So that was it, asking Muslims to be prepared for war, not to be hesitant. And this is it. وَاللَّهُ يَقْبِضُ وَيَبْسُطُ. It is Allah who withholds as well as who grants in abundance also. وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. And unto Him is your final return. Then Quran gives one more historical event. Relates. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الْمَلَئِ مِنْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ. Have you not considered the assembly of chiefs of children of Israel, min ba'di Musa, after Moses' time, إِذْ قَالُوا لِنَبِيِّ اللَّهُ مُبَسْ لَنَا مَلِكًا. When they went to their prophet and started requesting him, "O our prophet, you appoint a king over us. نُقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, so that we can fight in the way of Allah." The prophet asked them, هَلْ أَسَيْتُمْ إِنْ كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ. Won't it happen like that when fighting will be enjoined upon you, Allah tuqatil, that you shall not fight? They said, وَمَا لَنَا عَلَى نُقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ. Oh, our beloved prophet, how come We will not fight in the way of Allah. وَقَدْ أُخْرِجْنَا مِنْ دِيَارِنَا, whereas we have been driven out from our own houses and homes and our cities. وَأَبْنَيْنَا, and we have been separated from our children. But that happened. فَلَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقِتَالُ, the apprehensions expressed by Prophet proved true. When finally they were asked to fight, تَوَلَّوْا, they turned away from battlefields. They didn't fight. إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ مِنْهُمْ, except few amongst them. Wallahu alimun bizat, Allah knows. This is also to make Muslims of Medina understand that you should not behave like that. Interesting coincidence. When the Muslims were subject to various kind of atrocities, torture, persecution at the hands of Meccan pagans for 13 long years. Sometimes, even after reaching Medina, that continued. Some Muslims, sincere Muslims, would come to the Prophet, or our messenger. Why are not we being allowed to fight back? They are killing us. They are taking us for granted. They consider us weak. They are crushing us with the pulp. How long are we going to be patient and simply at the receiving end? Why we are not a Prophet would tell them, "Oh my worthy followers, don't you worry. I can't order anything because I don't do anything of my own. I am waiting for the orders of Allah. Allah has not asked us to fight. Till then, you have to be patient. You have to be an embodiment of patience and perseverance. Not to react, and Allah is with you." Isn't it same as it is here explained here about the people, this assembly of chiefs after the time of Moses, when they used to come to the Prophet and ask him to appoint our king so that we fight against our enemies. Similarly, Muslims. But finally, then after spending 1 year or more in Medina, Muslims were finally asked to fight. Now you have to fight now. You have to defend your territory and your faith. And you should teach your opponents a lesson. As I told you, maybe on some certain quarters, there would have been some hesitancy. They are explained, "Oh believers, you should not be like that." Those chiefs among the Israelis, who also wanted some commanders so that they could fight against their enemies. But when they were actually fight, they hesitated. They turned back, except few of them who stood their ground. "Oh, Muslims of Medina, you should take a lesson from this." And what did it happen? I'll just give a small background. When Bani Israel, children of Israel, they were living in Egypt against all the odds. They were at the receiving end. Pharaoh was so great an autocrat, a dictator, a tyrant, who had crushed Muslims, that's Bani Israel at that time, to the pulp. And finally Muslims, under the leadership of Moses, he was their prophet as well as leader, Musa alayhi salam, they left Egypt. And after crossing that sea miraculously and traveling through desert, Sinai desert, and it took them a long time. I'm not explaining why. Though it could have, this journey to Palestine could have taken them just few weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks or so. But Allah made them to wander in the deserts for 40 years. But not, will ask me why, please don't. It will be clear in due course of time. But they had. And ultimately, when they were about to reach Palestine, they had not yet entered their promised land. En route, during the journey, Moses also passed away. And then Harun also. And finally, Muslims, that's children of Israel, entered Palestine under the command of their then prophet, who was, after Moses who took over as prophethood, he was Joshua, whom we call in Arabic or Urdu, Yusha bin Nun. Yusha bin Nun. And biblical word is, there's a book of Joshua in Old Testament. Under his command, they entered and they were victorious. It was promised land for them. And Joshua lived for 25 years. And they were okay, everything was okay. After his death, Prophet Joshua passed away. There were moral deterioration among children of Israel. They forgot teachings of Moses, as they had forgotten even in his lifetime. There were exhibitions of faithlessness, immorality, disobedience around. And they got disintegrated. There was no unifying factor amongst them. And this advantage was taken by their opponents, enemies, who invaded Palestine, occupied their territories, threw children of Israel out of their homes and hearths, separated them from their families. It was a disaster for children of Israel, though they were Muslim at that time. But since that was faithlessness, disobedience, immoralities, and loss of trust and faith in one God, and they had forgotten the teachings of Moses, as we have today forgotten teachings of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It was like a situation like that. That's why the enemies, they invaded. That was also a divine anger against the children of Israel, that they were invaded by their opponents, their enemies, and they crushed them. They defeated children of Israel. They drove them out of their homes, killed in hundreds and thousands, looted their properties, molested their women. They did everything. In such times, it happened. It continued such countries for many years, many decades, maybe centuries. Many prophets during that time were raised from among the children of Israel, who used to remind them that, why is it happening? It's simply because you have forgotten the teaching of Allah and Moses, the great prophet. But they would not pay any heed to it. It is in such circumstances there was a prophet. Generally, it is believed that it was Prophet Samuel, because we have in Old Testament a book of Samuel. We say in Urdu or Arabic, Samuel Nabi. It is in the time of his prophethood. There's some chiefs. Since children of Israel, they were divided into 12 tribes. Why 12 tribes? 12 tribes because, Jacob had 12 sons. And it developed into 12 tribes. And then, during the time of Prophet Samuel, group of these chiefs of their respective tribes, they went to their prophet Samuel and requested him, "O prophet of ours, you appoint a king, because we are disintegrated. We are not united. We are scattered. We have been thrown out of our homes and houses. You appoint a commander," because Prophet Samuel was in too old and feeble age that time. They say, very old age. He could lead them himself in the battlefields and battlegrounds. That's why they request him to appoint a king or a commander under whom they would unite themselves, children of Israel, and then fight against the enemies. But since prophets have vision, they understood their community, their ummah better than anybody else. He told them, won't it happen that once, if Allah enjoins upon you fighting, you'll turn your backs, you will not fight? They started arguing, "Oh, Prophet, how is it? How come we'll not fight? Whereas we have been thrown out of our homes, we have been separated from our families, everything has been taken and snatched away from us. Why shouldn't we fight?" But at the end of the day, that happened. When details we shall read next time. This in a nutshell in this verse. Finally, Prophet Samuel, he appointed a commander, a king. That's Talut was his name, or Saul in biblical words. And Samuel asked them, now under his command you have to fight. But that happened, which was his apprehension. That most of them were hesitant when they found that their enemy is too strong, too mighty, and more in numbers. They started, that hesitancy developed in them. They didn't want to fight, they turned back. They were not ready to fight. The same thing which their prophet Samuel had foretold, forecasted. That's this was. Again, we can imagine, we have to make it compatible with the situation in Medina when Muslims were asked to fight. That's it. By relating such historical events, Muslims of Medina were asked that they should be ready to, for there should be no hesitancy whatsoever. It's like this. Alam tara ilal malai min bani Israel. Have not considered the chiefs from amongst the children of Israel, min ba'di Musa, because it happened maybe 100, 200, 300 years after Moses' time. when children of Israel were disintegrated, they were not united. They had broken into fragments. They had lost all the unifying factors. They had lost their almost faith too. Then in that conditions, they came, when they came to their prophet at the time, Prophet Samuel, and requested him, Iwaslana Malika, you appoint a king over us, or a commander, Nukatit fi sabilillah, so that we fight in the way of Allah. Qala, the great prophet, on the basis of his prophetic vision and experience, he told them, isn't that thing going to happen? That when fighting will be enjoined upon you, Allah tuqatilu, you shall not fight. Qalu, they said, how come we will not fight in the way of Allah? Whereas we have been driven out, thrown away, expelled from our homes, and separated from our families and children. Why shouldn't we fight? That Quran says, when finally fighting was enjoined upon them, they turned away, except few amongst them who stood to the ground, who followed the commands of their commander, and who paid due respect to their beloved prophet Samuel. Wallahu alimun bi-zalimin, and Allah has knowledge of such wrongdoers. That's why all believers of Madinah, you should not behave that way. You should take a lesson from that historical event related, explained in this verse. Sadaqallahu al-Azim wa sadaqa rasuluhu an-Nabiyyul Kareem walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.